Okay, we're starting from here. Yeah, sorry about that. Start from current slide. Okay, cool. So yeah, so that's that really. Legumes, well-known legumes include alfalfa, clover, beans, peas, chickpeas, lentils, lupins, mesquite, carob, soybeans, peanuts, and tamarind. Some of these I don't really know what these are, lupins and things like that, but this is a definition of legumes. Produce a botanically unique type of fruit. A simple dry fruit develops from a simple carpel. Usually, I don't exactly know how to say this word, but it looks like dehisces, opens along a seam on two sides. So that's what legumes are scientifically and so on. Some kinds of raw beans contain a harmful toxin, lectin phytohemagglutinin, which must be removed by cooking. Red kidney beans are particularly toxic. Other types also pose risks of food poisoning. There is a story from a vegan festival many years ago. A number of the large vegan festivals have happened, especially in the US. I don't know so much here, but they've had a raw section. They would have a raw food section, and they would have some raw food there, some raw food options. And one time they made a raw option with red kidney beans, and a lot of people ate this and went to the hospital. And the people that kind of knew not to eat red kidney beans raw were the ones that didn't go to the hospital. But this is a true story. Many types of bean contain significant amounts of anti-nutrients that inhibit some enzyme processes in the body. Phytic acid, phytates present in grains, nuts, seeds, and beans interfere with bone growth and interrupt vitamin D metabolism. Now, I don't think these things are really too much to worry about. I doubt that they interfere with these things too much. They might interfere to some degree or to a measurable degree, but maybe not to a degree that's going to really harm you too much. But it's not great. And it's this thing about anti-nutrients seems to come a lot from the people that want you to eat animal products. They say, well, a lot of the plant foods are full of anti-nutrients, which is not great, but they're probably not in quantities that really affect you that much, but they are there. Many beans contain oligosaccharides, and that's what really leads to the fact that they digest sort of poorly. Enzyme is necessary to properly digest these sugar molecules. As a normal human digestive tract does not contain any anti-oligosaccharide enzymes, oligosaccharides are typically digested by bacteria in the large intestine, and that leads to flatulence. And yeah, the beans lead to more flatulence. I don't know. I don't particularly find that very pleasant, but maybe some people, like to eat a lot of beans, don't mind that so much, or they're used to it, or whatever. I don't think it's that comfortable. But an example of beans that can be really bad for you, or the fact that they're so closely related to, they have such a close relation to toxic plants. Lathyrus sativus, I'm not sure how to pronounce. This was in the Second World War. In one of the concentration camps somewhere, they fed the prisoners on this particular type of legume that was cheap and is generally for other animals. And this led to this widespread disease from the legumes. So this is an account from that. By keeping the camp meticulously clean, the prisoners were able to overcome the typhus epidemic. But they suffered from the poor quality of the food, which included Lathyrus sativus, a species of pea that was normally used to feed livestock, and barley bread at a 20% straw content. A team of doctors among the inmates, led by Dr. Arthur Kessler of Cernăuți, I guess that's Romania or somewhere, reached the conclusion that disease presented all the symptoms of lathyrism, a spastic paralysis caused by the pea fodder. Within a few weeks, the first symptoms of the disease appeared, affecting the bone marrow of prisoners and causing paralysis. By January 1943, hundreds of prisoners were suffering from Lathourism. It just goes to show that we really need to, when it comes to eating plants, we actually need to be quite careful. We are not particularly well designed to protect ourselves against the toxins that are in many plants. This is quite unusual. And the idea that we're a plant eater or a herbivore doesn't seem quite right in the light of this evidence, in the light of the fact that certain peas and certain things are literally causing paralysis in humans. So maybe that's a reason why we can't really eat these things. We'd struggle to eat these things. They wouldn't be enjoyable to us in their raw state. We would not like the flavor of them raw. And there's a great film, by the way. I probably don't want to spoil the film for you, but there was a young man, a film was made about him because I don't want to spoil the film, but a film was made about him. He went out into the wild. The film was called Into the Wild. Brilliant film. Really, really recommend the film. And he struggled to get out of a particular area that he was caught when he went out in the wild. And there was suggestions that he had kind of starved, that he hadn't had enough food and so on. I'm kind of seen the film. Yes, scary. Yeah, so you've seen the film, Eddie. I don't want to ruin the film for any of you that have not watched it. Yeah, it's an absolutely true story. Now, I kind of don't want to ruin the film, but basically the guy goes out into the wild. He's prepared for it. He has a gun. He has all this stuff. He's got books about how to live and eat. He's got information. This is out in Alaska. He went, and he kind of got trapped, and he couldn't get out. And the place that he was at, the river flooded, and he couldn't get across it, and he couldn't get back supposedly to civilization. And ran it, and people thought he'd kind of starved to death. But this didn't really sit right with a lot of people, because even if you're starving, you can still walk, you can still move, and it would take an awfully long time before you would be unable to walk. And he was reporting that he actually wrote in his diary that he was unable to walk. And so subsequently, some people suggested that he may have had this Lathourism, that he may have been eating some local plants. He may have been driven to eating certain plants that caused this paralysis, and that really it was a paralysis that made him unable to get out and unable to get back to civilization when he sort of was having problems. And this is the danger, as I say, of eating, of going out and eating plants that we don't know. And I think they said that there was maybe a mistake in one of the books he was reading, in one of the wild food books. Anyway, it's a great film. I'm sorry I've ruined it a little bit, but anyway. Here's a good topic that I love to speak about, really. History of dietary deficiency in humans. People really worry about deficiencies in the raw food world, even people that have been doing it a long time. Even vegans that have been vegan for a long time, they're worried about deficiency. And Dr. Doug Graham pointed out a long time ago that it's really only healthy people on a healthy diet that are worried about deficiencies. Everyone else on a really terrible diet never cares about deficiencies or never worries. They all just assume that their diet has got no problems. And if you go on YouTube, or there's probably books about it as well, but you can find people that have strange diets. And I'm not talking about vegan or raw vegan. I'm talking about people that have a diet where they eat only one food, very restrictive diets, where they eat only macaroni cheese, or they eat only margherita pizza, or they eat only, one type, literally one type of food. And it's all they eat. It's literally all they eat. And the weird thing is a lot of these people aren't suffering any dietary deficiency or really any major dietary deficiency, as people can see. It's pretty difficult to go into a deficiency, really, to go into a dietary deficiency. It really requires a limit of certain foods. And maybe if you eat margarita pizza, you've just got just about enough of everything just to save yourself from deficiency. But also a lot of modern foods have been there's a lot of stuff that's been added into them to stop deficiency happening. But people will always question whether a raw vegan diet can provide us with all the nutrition we need. But we're only really aware of deficiencies occurring when humans had limited access to fruit. And this is the thing I find funny. I always have this thing of like, look at things the other way around. When people worry about deficiency, well, if people worry about diabetes or something, well, how many diabetics are eating a lot of fruit? If you're worried about obesity, how many obese people are becoming overweight? How many overweight people are doing that on fruit? If you're concerned about, your teeth or whatever, well, go to the dentist. Ask them, are all the problems here because people are eating a lot of fruit? It's very unlikely to be the case. Cancer, I don't know, any of the major diseases, go to the places where people are suffering from these things. Is it anything related to fruit? Alzheimer's disease, any of these diseases of old age, any of the autoimmune diseases, is it really anything to do with fruit? Is this ever been a problem? And when it comes to deficiencies, once again, we find that really the reality of it is it's when people didn't eat fruit historically that led to deficiencies. Scurvy being the most famous one that everyone knows about, and everyone knows that's a vitamin C deficiency, and it was solved by not a product from the pharmaceutical industry, which was why the solution wasn't found very quickly, of course. So hundreds of years sailors were dying from this, hundreds of years, and they were still looking for some medical solution to it, like evil spirits or whatever they believed back in the day. And they still seem to believe in evil spirits now. It's just got a different name. But so sailors living on biscuits and cured meat, which is not the human diet, and they got vitamin C deficiency predictably. And even witch doctors and herbalists knew what the problem was, but the medical industry didn't believe it or whatever. So it took a while for it to be established. We needed some science before we worked out what, rather than just give people fruit, as everyone else suggested. But so it's an interesting story that, but literally hundreds of years people were dying from scurvy, hundreds and hundreds of years. I think 500 years, it might have been 400 years. And probably the solution was kind of well known in a way, but wasn't official. There's probably plenty of people that knew what the problem was. But hard to keep fresh food for months and months on end, without refrigerators. Although they could have dried the food, I'm sure that would have been okay, but that would have led to less vitamin C, but still enough probably. And interestingly enough, vitamin C, we're one of the few animals that can produce vitamin C because we didn't need to. We had so much of it in our diet. And human beings will always eat foods that have vitamin C in them when we've got the chance to eat them. Pellagra is a niacin deficiency, vitamin B3. This happened in the South of America. I would suggest that you have a read into some of these things and have a look at, like, is anything of this to do with people being on vegan diet or fruit diet or anything? Like, it's never anything to do with that. It's always lack of fruit. There's always lack of fruits and vegetables, really. Pellagra, vitamin B3. Fruit is the best source of vitamin B3. It's the best source of all your B vitamins, really, and all the vitamins, really. And this is a corn-based diet. This is what people talk about, a plant-based diet, a starch-based diet. this is what they were living on. This is what the sailors were living on. Biscuits, which is basically dried bread. Starch-based diet, grain-based diet. But this is a corn-based diet, which makes it kind of a bit confusing. But it shows that even corn isn't an ideal food for us. And they prepared the corn in apparently not the right way. Now, people have been living on corn for a long time, you know, Mexicans and the Aztecs and stuff, but they were preparing it in a particular way. Well, these were American settlers that didn't know this, and they prepared it in a different way, and there wasn't any vitamin B3, and they became deficient in pellagra, was a major condition. It seems to me both of these would be healed and cured by eating more fruit, as simple as that sounds. Beriberi, vitamin B1 deficiency, it happened in Japan. They were eating polished rice, once again, starch-based diet, plant-based diet, whatever you want to call it. And they had this thiamine deficiency because they were eating polished rice. So there's B1 in the rice, but not if you process it in this way. They took off the husks or whatever. So they developed B1 deficiency. If they'd been eating fruit along with it, they wouldn't have had this problem. But I guess they didn't have access to a lot of fruit. And this happened. Beriberi can have, you can get B1 deficiency as well. Long-term fasting. Some people have apparently got beriberi by fasting for so long, because we don't have a very long store of vitamin B1. So I've heard stories of people, I can't scientifically prove this to you, but I've heard stories of people getting beriberi, which really no one should get beriberi, but through long-term fasting, over long fasting, you know, weeks or months without food or whatever. So, and it affects the brain. You know, it's not particularly a good thing to happen to you. There's other deficiencies, but these are the main huge big ones, big population-wide ones that we would think about. You could also that are nutrition food based. Rickets, which is vitamin D, wasn't really food based, but anyhow. So let's move on from that. So my point always with deficiencies happen when people don't eat fruit. They're not happening when people eat fruit or live on fruit, or don't have access to meat or whatever, or don't have access to starch. That's not the reason that people get deficient. And unfortunately, we still have people in the raw food world today who are still telling everyone that you can get deficiencies in a raw vegan diet. And I'm really, really struggling to understand what deficiencies they're talking about, because they're certainly not talking about any of these ones. They're making up deficiencies that don't really exist, I think, as far as I'm aware. But anyway, basic problems with cooking, problems with dehydration. When we cook foods, we dehydrate the foods, we remove the water. Foods are adapted to are high in water. Even bananas are 75% water. Watermelon is close to 92%. People don't think bananas are high in water, but they are 75% water. Reaching for a watermelon or cucumber after finishing an intense workout may hydrate your body twice as effectively as a glass of water, claims a 2009 study by researchers at the University of Aberdeen Medical School. This is so because water-rich fruits and vegetables also provide you with sugars, amino acids, minerals, salts, and vitamins that are lost in exercise. So it may be the case that fruit is a better source of hydration even than pure water, which is interesting. But cooking food in certain ways reduces the water content. It dries the food out, obviously. And we really require water. Low levels of dehydration affect human performance. This is really why people are demanded to drink so much water, because it's really a response to the diet that people eat. It's not an addition to it, it's a response to it, because of the salt, which dehydrates, and because of the cooking of the food, which dehydrates. Not all cooking dehydrates food, but certain types do. Problems with eating animal products. So here we get some more specific problems. With the animal products, we create things like heterocyclic amines. When the muscles of mammals, fish, or birds are cooked at high temperatures, carcinogenic chemicals, heterocyclic amines are created that may increase the risk of breast, colon, lung, pancreatic, and prostate cancer. Risky cooking methods don't just include barbecuing, frying, and grilling. Even just baking chicken at around 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 15 minutes leads to significant production of these cancer-causing compounds. So just like smoking, when people cook food and cause smoke, when they're barbecuing and all this stuff, they're causing cancer-forming compounds. Puts people at higher risk of breast, colon, lung, pancreatic, prostate cancer. So barbecuing, frying, and grilling, this is of animal products. There's also with animal products the production of polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. And cancer, once again, primary human health risk of exposure to these. Seems to be a lot of connection with cancer and cooking animal products. Been linked to cardiovascular disease, poor fetal development, linked to skin, lung, bladder, liver, stomach cancer in well-established animal model studies, Research has shown grilling, barbecuing, smoking meat and fish increases levels of carcinogenic polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons. Even breathing in the fumes poses a risk. So this isn't a habit that I've got of eating meat anymore. Maybe some of you don't either, but it's just worth knowing that people, this is really probably a major cause of some of these cancers, is the eating of these foods, but particularly grilling, barbecuing, smoking them, processing them is causing these extra compounds, polycyclic aromatic hydrocarbons and things like that. Is that going to convince people to give up barbecue? And I don't know so much, but it's a little bit of science around it. Trans fats created in the process for making hydrogenated oils, though they also occur in nature. These are connected to heart disease, diabetes, cancer, obesity. Trans fats, AGEs, once again, heating with animal products, advanced glycation end products, a biomarker implicated in aging and the development or worsening of many degenerative diseases, diabetes, atherosclerosis, which is heart disease, chronic kidney disease, Alzheimer's disease. Animal-derived foods that are high in fat and protein are generally rich in advanced glycation end products and are prone to further AGE formation during cooking. They age people. These are aging. That's what I mean. It's kind of appropriate, I guess, that they're called AGEs because they age people. They implicated in aging and the development or worsening of the diseases. So we don't want to age, so we want to stay away from that stuff. Another reason to stay away from that stuff. Modern diets are largely heat processed, as a result contain high levels of these things. Dietary advanced glycation end products contribute to increased oxidant stress, inflammation, linked to recent epidemics of diabetes and cardiovascular disease. So just another reason not to eat these foods, and why cooking them isn't a particularly good idea either. And you also might not want to be around the fumes of these foods. If you're living beside a restaurant or something, might be an idea to try and move away, or a person that barbecues all the time or whatever. In contrast, carbohydrate-rich foods contain relatively few AGEs, even after cooking. So not so much an issue with plant-based foods. AGEs have been implicated in Alzheimer's, cardiovascular disease, stroke. The mechanism by which AGEs include induced damages through a process called cross-linking that causes intracellular damage and apoptosis. I don't know exactly what these things are, but these are obviously leading towards disease, and that's what we're trying to avoid, I think. So you can go into the real detail around why and how that all happens, but it is happening, and it's potentially a major factor here. So what about plant foods instead of cocoa, as well as the production of what's called acrylamides, which is another carcinogenic? A lot of these things are carcinogenic. discovery in 2002 that some cooked foods contain acrylamide attracted significant attention to its possible biological effects. There was a situation, a study in which there were workers that were being exposed to a high level of acrylamides, and they went to test the workers and they went to test kind of other workers and stuff. And what they realized is that there was many people that already had a high exposure to acrylamide, and they couldn't work out where is everyone getting this high level of acrylamide exposure. It's not just the people working in the acrylamide, factory or whatever. The discovery, 2002, that some cooked foods have higher levels of acrylamide, including French fries, potato chips, foods made from grains such as breakfast cereal, cookies, and toast, and coffee, contain acrylamide, attracted significant attention to its possible biological effects. 2019 epidemiological study suggests it's unlikely that dietary acrylamide consumption increases people's risk of developing cancer, despite it being a probable carcinogen according to the IARC, according to American Cancer Society. Whether that's the kind of bias against food being bad for you or whatever, I don't know, but they're saying it's a carcinogen, but it's probably not, bad enough to be causing problems. There's more acrylamides, the more that these foods are brown, the more that they're cooked, the more acrylamide that is produced, and acrylamide is a probable carcinogen. So probable problem with heating up and cooking foods. Acrylamide was discovered in foods by an Eritrean scientist in Sweden, Edin Tareki. She found the chemical in starchy foods such as potato chips, French fries, and bread. They'd been heated higher than 120 degrees. Production of acrylamide in the heating process was shown to be temperature dependent. It was not found in food that had been boiled or in foods that were not heated. So it's about the level of heat. And if you had to eat these foods, you may wish to boil them rather than fry them and roast them and stuff like that. Studies on animals have shown links to many cancers. Dr. Michael Gregory shared research suggesting a link to kidney cancer, endometrial cancer, ovarian cancer, and human breast cancer. So it seems that there are studies in animals, at least, that show a strong connection with acrylamides and, once again, various cancers. But these studies are not confirmed in humans as of yet. Oh, no, human breast cancer. Another problem with plant foods, nutrient depletion. Essential vitamins are destroyed in the cooking process. Proteins become denatured in the cooking process. Nutrients become more available, but some nutrients do become more available. So you can say there's a balance there, but really, this is one of the oldest things that we know really in nutrition, that when we cook food, nutrients are destroyed, and that's not an unknown thing. Most people know that. The more that you cook something, the more that the nutrients are destroyed. Proteins become denatured. Whether these things are actually a major problem or not is questionable, because we don't actually require that much nutrition in terms of the micronutrients like vitamins and protein. Proteins aren't a micronutrient, but we don't require anywhere near as much, it seems, as people seem to think, and we can seem to survive on a lot less than the standard amounts. And especially if the population of people eat mostly cooked food and don't develop vitamin deficiencies and things like that, it shows that we really require very little to keep us going and avoid these deficiencies. Some nutrients become more available. There are some nutrients, lycopene and things that have been said to be more available after cooking, but is it really worth the damage that's caused? Well, that's a good question. What are really, though, the most important reasons to avoid cooked food? So that's some of the scientific reasons. There's some science there. There's some suggestions, some studies of links to diseases and things. But I really think, why, if we have superior foods, why eat second best? Let's see here. Yeah, if we have superior foods, why eat foods that are not as good? Foods that we have to cook, that we have to process, that we have a better option. Why have the second best thing? I think that one of the major problems with cooked food is that it's addictive, and people struggle to control their food choices in a cooked food diet. I think one of the great things about eating more raw food is more control around what you eat. And with cooked food, people develop really addictive habits with it. And people find it very difficult to give up cooked food. And a lot of people will claim to have found a kind of a balance with cooked food and raw food, but that's rarely the case. And someone was saying to me, what's wrong with someone having cooked food now and again, or a little bit of steamed vegetables now and again? And I don't think there's a problem with that in theory, but I just never see it in practice. I've just never seen it in practice, because what I've seen when I go to meet the people that tell me they eat a little bit of cooked food and all that kind of stuff, even in really nice places with lots of fruit like Thailand and things, I was hanging out with people and they're just, they were going to the restaurants every night. Every single night they were going to the restaurants, the cooked food restaurants, and they couldn't stop themselves, and I just never saw, and I've rarely seen this thing of people having some kind of balance with cooked food, especially the starches, which seem to be particularly addictive or compelling to people in some way. So the addictive nature of cooked food is something that's interesting to me, and why I would try and stay away from them. My own personal reasons: even the healthiest cooked food seems to always lead to a negative reaction, no matter how small. And even like the gourmet raw foods and stuff like that, processed foods, and it leads to some kind of negative reaction, leads to you not quite feeling yourself for a while. They're unsatisfying. They leave you often wanting to find something else to eat. You think it's going to satisfy, and it never quite does. Digestion is just never quite as good. So even if you were to eat the healthiest cooked foods, digestion never quite as good. The feeling of satisfaction is never quite as good. You can get a change in your skin appearance, and your appearance, and your body odor, which isn't necessarily all that pleasant. They might change your mood, change how you feel. Yeah, these are all my kind of personal reasons. So to come to a kind of summary of this presentation, cooking has been around for a long time in human history. I think in the next presentation we'll talk about that a bit more. And there may be, but we do come from millions of years of raw food eating, and every animal eats raw food, and every primate eats raw food, and every primate is a fruit eater, and our anatomy seems to still suggest that we are fruit eaters primarily. Problems with cooked food, to me, really, the fact that the foods themselves are probably not ideal if we can't eat them raw. If we can't eat them raw, there's a problem there, and these foods tend to have all sorts of other problems that come with them. Cooking animal and plant foods cause gases and chemicals that make these foods less healthy and potentially carcinogenic. Cooking depletes nutrients in food and dehydrates the food. And why cook when we have other delicious raw foods to eat, and when we can enjoy a raw food lifestyle quite easily? Why cook our foods? I guess that's the main question. So that's that presentation. Oh, that was quite long. We've went on an hour longer than usual. No, half an hour longer. But still happy to leave some time if anyone wants to talk or add a comment or suggestion or anything. We can chat a little bit, and that's all fine. Give me a moment. But I personally think it comes down to your own experimentation and your own experience. That'll be what makes you decide that you want to commit to a raw food diet or a raw vegan diet or not. and the level to which you want to commit to that. I think there's only two real options, which is 100% raw or something like 50% raw. I think it's very difficult. Some people say they're going to be 90% or 85% or 95% raw. And to me, 95% raw kind of means more like a person that eats 100% raw diet, but now and again they have something that's questionable as to whether it's cooked or not, like some kind of I don't know, some nuts or whatever that they're dried, but are they really dried or are they roasted? Like that kind of thing, like someone that's making like a mistake or something, or they have a pasteurized juice. Is that cooked really? Or they, something like that. But I don't really tend to see people eat, I'm going to eat 100% raw and then once a month I'm going to have a pizza, or once a month I'm going to go to a vegan restaurant. I don't see that. I don't see people do that. And one of the main reasons is the people that I know that eat a raw diet, they wouldn't enjoy that. They wouldn't enjoy having that food and then the effect it has. Because when you eat food, you're only eating for maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes really. And then the after effect of it could be 48 hours. So if you're eating raw all the time, why would you want to do that? Why would you want to have the cooked food meal that doesn't make you feel all that good? So I think you can add more raw foods to your diet, make it a bigger part of your diet. But it's very difficult to be 90% or 95% raw. And it's actually easier to be 100% raw than 95 or 99% or whatever people say. So I think those are the main options. And there's always going to be a big difference between 100% raw and 50% raw, as far as my experience is concerned. But that's what I would say. I never personally found the balance of cooked food once in a while, or once a week, or just in the evening, or whatever. I never found that to work, because there's such a bigger degree of attraction towards cooked food than towards raw food. If it's like bananas, or like even the simplest cooked food meal, or bananas, it's kind of like the cooked food meal is always the more compelling one to eat. So that's the way I kind of think about it. But it'll come down to your own personal experience and how you feel. And really, if you don't feel good on a raw food diet, I don't think there's a point in doing it. So people that do raw food, I had a friend that was saying that she doesn't do raw food anymore 100%. Because when she was eating raw, she was eating anything to stay raw. And she was eating raw vegan Snickers bars and all this junk food. And she said she just couldn't, stick to it any other way. And of course, if you feel bad doing it because you're eating Snickers bars that are raw and all these things, then there's no point in doing it. It is healthier to have a low-fat, simple diet with cooked food than a very complex gourmet raw diet all the time. But that's not really the choice, because there is the choice to have the simple raw diet all the time, which is a fruit-based diet, and it's very simple, but it's so simple that people don't even consider it really. And to me, the simpler it gets, the better it gets. Like, we want variety. We really desire kind of variety and stimulation. But the more that we're looking at that from food, maybe we're not getting enough of that, or considering that maybe we should get that from our life. And maybe there's other things missing, and not that means you don't have a life, but just that maybe there's other ways of getting that variety than from your food. But primarily for me, it's a commitment to how you feel. It's really round about how you feel. And if you feel better doing this, you're going to do it. You're going to want to do it. And if you do it in such a way that you feel bad, then you're not going to want to do it, of course. For me, I was just curious enough to continue with it because I realized there was a difference. I realized there was some difference, And that kept me motivated to try and continue to make that transition. So that's the way I sort of think about it. Thank you, everyone. Any questions from tonight? Any comments? It was quite a longer presentation than the other ones.
Just one comment, Ronnie. I'm reading
I
this
think it's a very personal thing. I think that it can be difficult, but it's worth it. I think it's a great diet, great lifestyle for it to be so simple. And I just could never. I always regret not having fruit if I have something else. Almost like in New York, in different places, there's raw food restaurants, and always kind of regret not just eating fruit if I have one of those meals. Afterwards, at the time, it seems like a great idea, and so this is the constant thing you've got going with yourself, because we want that stimulation and flavor and stuff. But gradually, you start to think it's not worth it anymore. The flavor isn't worth it. It doesn't really satisfy. It doesn't really do anything great for you. And if it leaves you feeling not so good for an hour or 2 hours or something, is it really worth it? And eventually, for me, I just thought it's not worth it. It's not worth. And I was lucky to meet mentors and different people that had shown me that their level of commitment. They just committed to this diet decades ago, and it was just their thing. They just stuck to it, and they were very disciplined with it. Well, they weren't disciplined. It was their habit to be disciplined with it, so it wasn't difficult for them. And I just thought, wow, it's so great to be giving yourself the best choice all the time. Yeah, so thank you very much. We'll see you in the next class. We actually got Jane Sinclair on Monday, who's going to be given an EFT session or class or explanation for going raw. She also does private sessions if you want to contact her afterwards. Obviously, a lot of you met her at the festival, and I don't know if she does some online stuff at the moment. She has done some classes online, but it's good for us to put on a class for her as well. This Friday, I'll be running the Fruity Friday group, which is the same link and it's the same time, 7 p.m. Friday night. It's more of a group interaction, discussion, talking points, discussion. Sometimes we were watching certain films. We've not been doing it the last few weeks. Need to get it going again because I quite enjoy it and it's quite fun and everything. And I've got a lot of friends involved in it. Yes, Barbara, you were a little bit late tonight, but the whole video should go up. Thank you, Rebecca. Thanks, everyone. So I'll see you all hopefully Monday. If you want to join the Fruity Friday group, that's on Friday. Yeah, thank you, everyone, for your attendance.
Thanks, Ronnie.
See you all later. See you all soon.
Thank you. Take care.